throwing them up and knocking them out of the park.
Hello and welcome back to the Brit Iron podcast. Today we are continuing with our season preview, and today is the 11th ranked team, the Houston Texans, who we've got pitted out at 10-6. And of course today joined by Matt and Sam. How are we today?
Very well, mate. How are you?
Oh, that's the first time you've ever asked.
That is the first time one of us has done that. That's so bad.
I thought, you know what?
Jesus.
Maybe I want to know how James is doing for once.
Well, how long you got?
That's bad, isn't it?
But yeah, today the Houston Texans, I think it's a very talented roster. However, there's one talking point to kick things off, and that is in the wide receiver room, and that is D-Hop leaving. Or being traded, I should say, actually. So how much does this trade really hurt that offense?
I mean, anytime you get rid of a player of that caliber that's arguably the best at his position in the league, it's going to hurt your team. Obviously, they've brought in a few different names to try and sort of fill that gap or work around it. Obviously, mainly Brandon Cooks, who on his day can help to bridge that gap, but with the injuries, the sort of concussion history, a bit of a risk there whether he can do it for a whole season as consistently as D-Hop would. And obviously, getting David Johnson in return. If it was the old David Johnson, I can understand it, and he may well bounce back. But I really didn't like this trade. I was really not a fan for me.
I'm going to jump in and be a bit controversial here.
Ooh, like this.
I don't hate the D-Hop move. I think when you put it in greater context for this team, I think it's actually a move that makes a lot of sense. They're a team that are probably going to want to run the ball a bit better than they have in seasons past. And I think realistically, David Johnson is a bit of an upgrade at running back, especially so now you've got David Johnson and Duke Johnson there, both with very similar skill sets. So they're going to be very interchangeable. They're two dynamic running backs who you can do a lot with. And I think if David Johnson can come back and stay healthy, then he will be productive. I think that the issues people have had over the last couple of years with David Johnson is he got paid obviously silly money, and he wasn't in that top 1 or 2 running back discussion while he was getting paid silly money. Although he has still been, whilst on the field, a solid player. Yes, his yards per carry have come down considerably, but he's still great out of the backfield catching, and I think if the O-line can hold up, then David Johnson and Duke Johnson between them will get a job done. Now, before the Brandon Cooks was added, I might have said this deal is terrible. But now that you've gone and added Brandon Cooks, and you've got Will Fuller in the background, who I love, again, if he's another player, if he stays healthy, I think he is good enough to be a number 1. And all the other players there, I think that actually the sum of the parts adds up to more than what you've lost with D-Hop. Which, obviously D-Hop is better than any of those one players, but with all of the things they've put around this team, it's better to have multiple pieces than just one.
Yeah, that's...
So I'm very much of that opinion, and whilst I can see how Bill O'Brien will get absolutely crushed if
100%.
Will Fuller comes out, gets injured, Brandon Cooks can't deal with this concussion issue he's had that's been niggling him, and David Johnson doesn't perform, then O'Brien is going to get absolutely crushed. However, there's a very real possibility if all of those players stay healthy for at least 10, 11 games, that they're in the playoffs still, and that they're a better team than they were last year with D-Hop. Like, I do like the idea that they've not just valued... Yes, I think D-Hop's the best receiver in the league. But he's one player on a squad of 53, so I actually don't hate this transaction.
Yeah. No, I see the value there as well, and I think that receiver room is one of the more talented ones in the league. Just looking above the ones you've already mentioned, you've got Kenny Stills and Kiki Kuti as well as a couple of rookies. So it's a very talented locker room in that respect. So I think you're right. You know, losing D-Hop is big, but they've got the players there to pull them through.
I think the slight issue I have on it is, as a offense now, or at least as a group of weapons on the offense, because I think there's still questions in that offensive line. I think it's been towards the bottom end of the league in recent years, and they haven't fully really kind of addressed that. So you're going to have a sort of similar thing of Deshaun Watson running for his life a little bit at points, trying to make something happen. But although there is enough weapons there to do it, I kind of hope they've extended and got practically a medical wing on their training facility, because there is potential here for so many of these names, if they kind of follow what they've done in the past, not necessarily massive injuries, just to be going down. I had David Johnson last year in our Dynasty League, and maybe that's maybe a bit more alert to it, but it felt like there was constantly, after sort of about week 5, there was something. And that's why I think for David Johnson, I would look at it as, when you talk about a player's floor and ceiling, I think they're both made of glass, because he could very easily shoot through the ceiling or fall through the floor this season. I think he could get injured and just, and it just kind of all becomes a nightmare in Houston in terms of that trade, because that's even more pressure if he does start to play badly. Or it's the right fit and he starts to come back and we see a bit of the old David Johnson. And then we know he can do it. And if he stays healthy and plays back up at least to 80% of what he used to be, he'll be a very good back. And it's a gamble for me. It feels like they've maybe gone a little bit less the kind of consistency of D-Hop, where they've got, although there's more parts, there seems to be a slight question mark or a slight talking point to the majority of the weapons. There's like something there that you've got to kind of ask yourself about. Like even, I think, Deshaun Watson, if you compare him with Carson Wentz, in terms of games missed since they came into the league, he's actually ahead of Carson Wentz. He's got more.
But,
and Carson Wentz,
Deshaun did have most of his first season. I mean, he only played 7 games in his first year.
But it's still just an interesting stat that he's not as stay in terms of missing games to injury as Carson Wentz, who everyone seems to think is always injured.
I would argue
there's a lot of question marks for me here. That if they all stay healthy, I'm not arguing the talent or the ceiling of this team. They're a playoff team. It's just big if.
I would argue that the thing with Deshaun Watson as opposed to Carson Wentz is Carson Wentz has been injury prone behind some good offensive lines, like some very good offensive lines. Deshaun Watson has consistently, since he's come into the league, been one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the league. So I'm less. The things that worry me about Deshaun Watson are his ACLs. I think he's had both of them gone now. I think he did one when he was in Clemson and one obviously his first year in the league. So it will be interesting to see if they hold up. But I think a lot of that is less dependent on his body and more that O-line, because
which is the big worry
he has
for
been
me, because they haven't addressed it.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's concerns.
Yeah, it's a weird one to judge. It could be incredible, or it could just be like, oh god, goodbye, Bill O'Brien.
Yeah,
because they haven't got the defense there either to carry them off the back of. They've gradually kind of lost some parts in that, and that defense is going to be leaky. So they're relying on this offense to come out and be a high-scoring offense for this season for me.
Which I think they will be. I think Deshaun Watson is too good not to be putting up 25 points a game minimum.
Oh, undoubtedly, yeah. I'm not arguing any of that. It is a very talented room. It's just a lot of question marks. It's just a lot of it's just slightly uncomfortable.
It's the injury thing, isn't it? This team is the definition of the team that you look at and you think, if everybody stays healthy, then they've got an electric offense and a defense that's good enough.
Yeah.
It's just all of literally every single position on their offense, at least, there's the question of, are they going to stay healthy? Yeah. And, I mean, that's just something that if James would like to lead off with his little catchphrase.
Oh, we'll have to wait and see, won't we? Have to wait and see.
Exactly.
Moving back to Deshaun Watson, though, and I'd like to bring up a infamous tweet that you made, Sam, a few years ago, where you said that Deshaun Watson is the best quarterback under the age of 30. Now, this was made 2 years ago, I think, roughly.
Yeah.
So before a few high-name players were in the league.
Yeah, so this was before Lamar Jackson came into the league, and it was before Patrick Mahomes had seen the field. So it was during, I believe I made it 5 or 6 games into Deshaun Watson's career.
Yeah.
It might have been after the Cincinnati game, actually. Do you remember he had that one kind of signature run in his rookie year? I think it was a Monday Night Football game, and it might have been the first win.
Yeah.
And you watched it, and at the time you were comparing him to other emerging young quarterbacks, players like Carson Wentz, players like who else? It would have been Jared Goff at the time. That kind of players, Marcus Mariota. And I stand by that. I think at the time he was the best quarterback under the age of 30, and I think even now he's probably top 3 or 4. Yes, I don't think that tweet has aged badly at all. Nobody was going to foresee.
My question was going to be,
the defense.
Do you still believe it? That was my question. Do you still believe it? Because I could definitely see it back then, and now I think there's a few more question marks now. But you sort of alluded to it there with top 4. In the under 30 bracket.
I think he's the second most talented. But under the age of 30, purely most talented, I think he's a more talented quarterback than Lamar Jackson. I think what Lamar Jackson has got, he's an incredibly talented athlete, and he is a good quarterback, but he's fallen into kind of the perfect storm where he's got the right offense, he's got a coach that believes in him and will fit the game around him. Deshaun Watson has kind of fallen into a bit of a hellfire where he was thrown behind a dodgy offensive line. I mean, he was I think it was halfway through week 1 of his rookie year. The guy who was starting at the time, Tom Savage, I believe, had been sacked 5 times in the first half, or 10 times in the first half, something stupid, and they just chucked Watson in there. Watson didn't get the privilege of being at one of the best organizations in the NFL, in the Ravens or the Kansas City Chiefs. He wasn't allowed to sit. He didn't have all of these other things. And what Watson came in straight away, was electric straight away, was putting up historic numbers for a rookie at the time. If he'd have played a full 16-game season as a rookie, he would have the best rookie quarterback season in NFL history. He went down injured halfway through. I believe that if you just look at the pure talent and everything that Watson has, if you put him in the Mahomes or the Jackson situations, that Watson would be good enough to have gone and won a Super Bowl. If you put the good offensive line and give him those insane weapons. Because really all he's had is bad offensive lines and DeAndre Hopkins. Other than that, they haven't really had anything. And he was, like I said, thrown into the fire day one. I almost feel bad for him because he is so talented, and I don't want to see someone who I think is potentially in that kind of transcendent category just have their career wasted. I mean, you look at what happened to Andrew Luck. He was a number of years thrown behind dodgy offensive lines and not given much, dragging the Colts to 11-5 win seasons. But arguably, you could say they wasted his career.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the thing for me is it's looking at it now, personally, in my opinion, the young quarterbacks. You've got obviously Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, who for me are the 1 and 2, and just based off currently is maybe more of the last season, especially with the way Lamar Jackson sort of elevated himself and became next level. Yeah, you can almost place them 1 and 2 based on preference. I think they're very good at slightly different ways of playing the position, but they're as good at how they play the position as each other, in my opinion. Then I think below that you've got Deshaun Watson, obviously, and I think if you put him in the right place, he's shown in college he's got that clutch factor. The one that I actually think that personally, and I know I'm higher on this guy than you, I actually put Wentz at a very similar level to Watson for me. I really like the way Wentz is going to. Yes, he's been in a better position, but I think in terms of as a quarterback, of kind of similar age and everything, I think they're very even talent-wise. And they're going to be two that we'll be talking about throughout their time through the league comparing. I think, I'm not saying that necessarily one's better than the other, but I'm saying they're the 3-4 for me in that age bracket. currently.
See, I think
sense.
that the difference between me and you then is because I think Mahomes is just that much better than Jackson, and I would actually say that Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson are more a coin flip for 2 and 3.
Fair enough.
I think that's fair.
And they could over the next couple of years, I can see it being Mahomes. Everyone knows he is just head and shoulders above everybody else in the league at the moment. And then you got that step down with Watson and Jackson. And I think those two are the kind of guys that are going to be battling for 2 and 3. And every now and then, one of them will come out and have a mad season and they win the MVP instead of Mahomes.
I think another guy that needs to also have a bit of recognition on it is Dak Prescott. I think he is also he is talented. And I think at some point we're going to see him have one of those seasons. And it could even be this season. That he is going to come out and just light the league up.
Yeah.
I think if he's going to, this season probably is going to be one of his best shots. Potentially it will continue into next season if he's still there. But he's another guy that I think could arguably break into that top 3 if he plays to sort of the expectation I think is building and to what I think is within the realms of possibility for him. But I think bringing this back sort of onto the Texans, I do agree with you, Deshaun Watson. You can't not put him in that conversation for that 3rd spot. No matter who else you like, he is a name that has to be there for even second, depending on how you look at it. And for that top spot.
The big thing for me is just what he's done with so little around him. He's consistently Pro Bowl level quarterback. He comes into the league. He's the thing I prefer over the Wentz discussion is I think Deshaun Watson's just more consistent. Wentz, like at the end of last year, Wentz put a string of 4 or 5 games when he had to win games together where he looked incredible. He looked really great. But at the start of the season, he had a couple games where he looked really dodgy. Whereas Deshaun Watson, when he's on the field, looks great. Has done from his rookie year.
Yeah,
with almost nothing around him. Yeah. So this is why I'm really high on the Texans this year because I think they've finally got. Again, it's not just D-Hop. You've suddenly got more options around him, and if everyone can stay healthy and he's got a better quality running back, and if all that can come together, then I think the offense can be more consistent, and you just give Watson more options rather than when it's late in the game you're preying on Watson pulling out a bit of magic and throwing deep for a bit of D-Hop magic.
Yeah, 100%.
I think it's quite exciting to be a Houston Texans fan. On the flip side, if this implodes, then who knows what will happen because D-Hop's gone. You're going to have Watson up for a contract and he might simply just turn around and go, no, I'm not playing for you because you're wasting my career. He plays 1 season on a franchise tag and then hits the free agent market. Bill O'Brien will be gone and suddenly they're a completely rebuilding team. So this is going to be a really boom or bust year for the Texans, I think. And for Bill O'Brien especially.
Yeah. Edgier seat, I think, almost watching this for every play. It could be a massive play, or it could be a play that just their season kind of starts to crumple with the wrong kind of hit and injury. It's it'll be exciting, but probably a little bit terrifying to be a Texans fan at points. You're going to be watching everything like, every hit. Just like,
I wouldn't want to be Bill O'Brien if they don't make the AFC Championship game this year, or at least get close to challenging it. I would not want to be Bill O'Brien because when you're coming off of a year where you've blown a 24-0 lead in the divisional round against Patrick Mahomes and you've just let that slip through your fingers.
Yeah.
I mean, against Mahomes or not, 24 points to lose that in a half is pretty embarrassing. To then go out, trade your best player away, if you don't come back and look as good / better, then surely he's got to be on the firing block because it's not like he hasn't been given chance after chance after chance, and at the moment it's looking like he can't take them past the divisional round.
And it's bold as well in this division. It's a big, tough division. Like, we've got 3 of the teams in that division that are all in this sort of range of the list, if not a bit higher than this, and it's any one of them could show up and win this, and then it's going to be tough. Yeah, you might get the second one getting into the wild card spots, but then for this 3rd team, suddenly 3rd, it looks bad. It's not a good look on a team, and you could have a good record. You could have a better record than the team in 2nd in some other, but it's just not the like. It's a very tough division. So
and outside of the division as well, outside the division, the schedule is, I think, is incredibly difficult. open up against
places,
the
yeah.
Chiefs, and they're playing the Ravens and the Steelers and the Vikings. It's not easy by any stretch of the imagination. So whilst
And
I
even
think
before
it's
they're by
talented,
Green Bay and Tennessee on the back
exactly,
of that as well.
yeah.
Like,
And then I mean, it gets a bit easier after the bye, but by that point you should really get a feel for that team. Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the more exciting teams. But like you said, Sam, very much boom or bust. I feel for this season.
Yeah.
And perhaps this is a good point to turn on to the fantasy side of things. And maybe we'll stick on the Deshaun Watson front. I know we've spoken a little bit about him already, but I was intrigued to see what round you guys would be looking to take him in a fantasy draft.
I think for me, and this is purely because I think the question when it comes to Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, and maybe depending on how you view it in fantasy, Russell Wilson is a personal preference decision. I think traditionally in mocks I've been seeing, you've got Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray going beforehand, and then Dak and Deshaun Watson following up a round or two later, sort of more where you've got Wilson and Kyler Murray going sort of 4, 5, and then you've got obviously Deshaun Watson and Dak Prescott going maybe more kind of 6th, relatively consistently. I think I'm a Kyler guy for this year. I've said it in the past episodes, so I'd be taking Kyler. But if I didn't, and I could get Deshaun Watson in the 6th round, that'd be great. Like, I'd be happy with that if I'm going quarterback early. I think it's a fine place. I don't think he's being overdrafted or underdrafted particularly, because there is uncertainty around this of he hasn't got Hopkins there. Although there is the names, can the names step up and be on the field, as we've already said. But I think if you like him and you want a quarterback in the 6th round, go for it.
I wouldn't take him as high as the 6th at all. That's not because I don't think that's where he should go. I think it's just I don't want a piece of Deshaun Watson at that premium. If I'm taking a quarterback in that kind of 6th round range, then I would be looking more at trying to get someone who I think is a bit more durable. So Russell Wilson, someone who doesn't miss games, because if I'm spending that high of a capital on a quarterback, then I want to know that they are playing week in, week out, apart from their bye, which, as much as I love Deshaun Watson, and I think Deshaun Watson's the kind of guy who, if he has a big year, could be the quarterback 1 in fantasy, because he does put up a lot of touchdowns and he runs the ball and all of these things. Of the guys who run the ball, he's more in the Josh Allen category to me, in the sense of he worries me that he could go down. So if I'm taking a quarterback that high, I'm going for Russell Wilson or Mahomes if I really want to reach. If I really want to reach for the 3rd round and take Mahomes, then I'll take Mahomes. The next quarterback that I would consider in that kind of next bracket down in the 6th round would be Russell Wilson. And to be honest, I'm probably not going near any of those, and I'm taking a 10th round swing on Carson Wentz or Daniel Jones or someone like that.
I think the big thing for me is I think the reason you're seeing Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson going earlier and perhaps not making it to the 6th where Deshaun Watson is because they do stay healthier. I think especially if Russell Wilson has more of the track record, which is why he's pretty consistently the 3rd quarterback off the board, 4th, 5th round, followed by Kyler. Then you're into Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, Josh Allen. You're into that range of those guys with the running base, but a bit of a risk to him.
Personally, just touching on, I know it's not a Texans player, but I wouldn't be drafting Dak Prescott anywhere near his ADP just because he again, boom or bust. If that offense gets rolling and Zeke is just on a tear and Zeke's going for 150 yards a game, then they might not be throwing the ball that much. Like, they are going to want to run the ball with the money that Zeke's getting paid and stuff like that. So if they don't have to throw the ball loads, they'll keep what Dak does short and efficient rather than him throwing 300 a game. And you could see something similar to his rookie year where he was relatively efficient, but he's not putting up monster numbers.
I disagree because of the receiver core there with Dak. That even if, let's say they're playing short plays, they've got guys there that are going to make something happen with it and elevate plays. And I think you don't draft as well another early on receiver in that draft to focus only on running the ball. I think obviously they've got Zeke, they are going to lean on him. But I think Deshaun Watson and Dak, for me, are pretty 50-50 for this year. Personally, it's a personal preference thing. Yeah. I think it's a big year for Dak for me. And not in a boom or bust way, he's going to be part of, I think, probably a juggernaut offense.
I really struggle to see a world in which Deshaun Watson is below Dak. I must admit, I think there could be a little bet on the line.
Depends on the injuries, right? Depends on the injuries.
Yep.
I think we've established that one. But moving on to the wide receiver room, and perhaps outside of Brandon Cooks, who are we looking to target in a draft for this one? Obviously, you've got Kenny Stills, Randall Cobb, Will Fuller, Kiki Kuti. I mean, Chad Henson's listed on there, but
I think Fuller's the name that jumps out. If he stays healthy, like we said 100 times this episode about players, but he's a guy that in fantasy can win you weeks because he'll go out and just have a monster game. It's what he seems to do, and especially without Hopkins there now, there is a spot for him to really open up as the field stretcher and the big play guy. Just do it more consistently instead of it being a sporadic thing, to quite consistently put up big numbers. So I think if I'm taking a piece, it's him. I would potentially consider him over Brandon Cooks just because I'm really nervous. Okay. I'm more nervous about Will. I'd rather have Will Fuller because I trust him to be on the field more than Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, and Will Fuller's got a proven connection with Deshaun Watson. Whenever Will Fuller's on the field with Deshaun Watson, Will Fuller scores touchdowns. The interesting two to me out of this wide receiver core is actually Kenny Stills and Randall Cobb. I think one of I don't know which one, but one of those two I think will turn into a very reliable number 2 guy and might become more of a target soaker and just soak up, become the safe throw. Randall Cobb has had a number of years in his career where he was quite productive for fantasy in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, effectively being the number 2 to Devontae Adams. Kenny Stills has shown consistency. He's, again, not massive boom weeks, but if one of these two can kind of make their mark and really establish themselves as the number 2 kind of safe over the middle guy, then they could have a lot of targets, which, again, it's the opportunity to be a productive guy in fantasy.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and what about David Johnson? We mentioned him earlier. What sort of value are you putting on him in the fantasy setting?
Well, I quite like him going into this year. I think for where he's being drafted overall, I think purely because of the capital that they put into him. When you trade away your best player to go and acquire a running back who's had a couple of down years, they've got to give him the ball at least 300 times. They have to give him all of the opportunity in the world to show that he can still do it. Because if they don't, why the hell are you making that trade in the first place? So I think that if he stays on the field and we take injury out of it, he's getting between 3 to 350 touches on the year.
Should be, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Now, he will also absorb some of those targets that D-Hop took up. So all of the opportunity is there. So even if he has a sub 4 yards a carry kind of season, I think there'll be enough carries that he will still be productive. It just all depends on his health.
Yeah, I think I do agree. I think there is all the potential in the world there. Where he's being drafted, people aren't overreacting to it and drafting him too early. I think his ADP is fine. I think for me, it's almost the positive and the thing you want in your running back to be given a load of carries and have opportunities out the backfield. The amount he could get and they could put into him because of that trade makes me really nervous. Because, and maybe it's just because I was his owner of him last year and he was good early. And I was sat there thinking, brilliant. Like, this is great. This is like something in our dynasty startup a couple of years ago. I took him second round, I think it was, back end of the second. And then last year, I kind of start the season and think, oh, okay, I like the look of this. This is a good start. And then it just all went to just little injuries here and there. And that's what worries me. I would rather if they came out and were like, it's not going to be, I'm not talking about any kind of a complete split, but almost have him out when they're going to use him and have it more designed and just kind of protect him a bit more. And not give him 300, 350, but he gets injured after 5 weeks. Almost use him less, but when they do, effectively. Yeah. And kind of scheme around him when they have him on the field. But I think, there's all the opportunity in the world. He could come out and he could be, if he comes out, I think if he stays healthy, he should be an RB1 this year.
Oh, yeah.
If he plays 16 games, he will be a top 10 running back.
Yeah, 100%. He should.
Yeah, there is no way he's not. I mean, that system consistently pumps out 1,000-yard rushers from names that aren't actually that good players. I think this guy's got a lot of talent. He's been unlucky with the injury bug, and he's also had a couple of years on just bad teams. Like, it doesn't matter. You can say, oh, he's not been very productive in Arizona and stuff. It's like, yeah, but look at the offensive line he was running behind. Like, Josh Rosen just spent a season getting destroyed behind the thing. Like, you can't put it all just on David Johnson.
No,
yes, there are some things with his tape, but you never know. A change of scenery, it might just kind of revitalise him. And I think that for where he's going, it's completely worth taking a swing at him. Because you're probably not drafting him to be your running back 1.
No.
You're probably getting him at a running back 2 value, at which point, take a swing.
Upside,
Yeah, exactly.
The one thing, though, for me that I like is Duke Johnson, because I don't think David Johnson stays healthy. And I think if they start to change the scheme to be running back heavy, obviously I'm not expecting him to come out and be any kind of running back 1, even if David Johnson went down week 1. But for where you can draft him, because people seem to have just forgotten he exists in some drafts, if you pick him up, you might not get a lot of value out of him, even if it's 8 weeks. But then, if David Johnson does go down, or just isn't his old self, and he starts to get opportunities for where you've drafted him, as a guy you could sit as a flex guy, you could start to get some great value from him. So if you're coming towards the later part of the draft, sort of out for a running back of at least sort of around maybe 9-10, and he's sat there, and you don't have any massively pressing needs, if you're feeling quite comfortable with what you've got and you know you're gonna have a bench spot free, he's a guy I'm personally keeping an eye on, because there could be big upside on him as well.
If he gets touches as well, he's had. I mean, last year he averaged 4.9 a carry. That's on 83 carries. If David Johnson goes down and 83 carries becomes 200, then suddenly you've got a running back 1 or 2 week to week. Probably not over the season, like you say, because you won't necessarily be starting in all those games. And even last year with Carlos Hyde there, Carlos Hyde was getting 15 carries a game average, and Duke Johnson was getting more like 5. But I can see, like you say, if David Johnson goes down, then suddenly Duke Johnson's up to getting 15 to 20 a game, and he is again top 15 running back probably.
Yeah, definitely. There's value there, and especially considering where you're going to be able to draft them as well. I think for sure. And just quickly before we wrap up, there's one position room we haven't talked about, and that is tight end. 2 names I'm seeing there: Darren Fells and Jordan Akins, jumping out to me. Big Darren Fells, might add, 6'7" guy, 280 pounds. Wow, big boy. Who are we excited about in that tight end room in particular?
I'm not excited, but I'm keeping an eye on it if I need to stream a tight end potentially. Darren Fells, I think, is a guy that you can, depending on how your league and obviously the size of the benches and everything, that a normal league should be there as a guy you can stream some weeks. And potentially in this offense where there's more targets going, and he's a guy who's been there and did have some good weeks last year, he's got touchdown upside. Potentially, he could have some nice handy weeks, and the kind of guy that if you really need, you could pick up, put him in, and he does you well, and he kind of gets you to a win just from getting a touchdown or 2.
I would imagine
offense.
I would imagine I'll be starting Darren Fells week 1 in our dynasty. Yeah. For me, I think I picked up. I've got Tyler Eifert and Darren Fells in our dynasty, and I'm going to run with the 2 of them as my tight ends next year. I'm going to for this coming season, and I'll chop it and change based on the matchup each week.
Yeah.
And I think Darren Fells kind of slots into that nice position where you're not going to go out and draft him to be your starter every week like you would go out and take Zach Ertz or Travis Kelce or George Kittle. Yeah. But once that kind of top echelon of the best guys and then the solid starters are gone, he's going to be in the similar, for me, he's in a similar conversation to someone like Higbee or someone like that who could turn out to be a weekly great guy, but you'll probably get 5 or 6 good games a year out of him, and the rest will be meh for a tight end. But that's pretty standard for most tight ends in the league.
Yeah.
It happens. So I'm happy riding with Eifert and Fells in the dynasty. And if I don't get one of these, if I don't put a high priority on tight end, I would be happy with him as my week 1 starter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I can't argue that at all, if I'm being honest. However, unfortunately, I believe we have run out of time for this episode. So, as ever, please check us out on YouTube. Go like, comment, and subscribe. I think it's that way for me, isn't it? Yeah, all the social medias.
Other way, Sam. Other way, lad.
That way?
Yeah, there we go.
Are you
Wait,
sure?
where is it? Where is
I'm
it?
pretty sure it's down there for me.
Mate, it's under here. Trust me. I'm looking
see,
at
we'll
it.
see.
And
We'll
also,
see.
as we've
I'm
alluded
looking
to
at
here,
it, lad.
as we've alluded to, check us out on Instagram, Twitter, at the Brit Iron, as you can see. Got some content going on over there, and of course, we are setting up a listener league, and we have a couple of posts up on both the social media handles we've mentioned, and as you can see again.
You're loving that, aren't you?
Oh, mate, I'm overusing it now. Now I know it's there. It's incredible. But yeah, we're doing a draw for the Listen League very shortly in the coming week. End of July, we're aiming for. So yeah, register your interest and get involved. But for now, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.